as of right now. I'm glad I remembered to do that. We do have the recordings from our last 2 sessions and minutes from the last 2 sessions up on our website as well. So if you'd like to relive our past sessions, head on over to our website. So I think all of you are familiar with NLRA. I don't think I need to give an introduction to the organization. Either you are a trustee or you have been to several of these sessions already, or you work for NLRA. So I think that covers, or married to a trustee. So that covers, I think, pretty much everyone here. So we're in the midst of our strategic planning process, kind of an exciting time for NLRA as we celebrate our 50th anniversary and look forward to the next 50 years. So we've been exploring topics around our work. We looked at community engagement. We looked at lake and watershed health, and tonight we're going to explore environmental education. Lake and watershed health, the session last week was really kind of the core of the work we do, the core of our mission, and education is really the kind of the way we communicate it and how we teach people about what we do and why we're doing it. So the intent is for this session to be a conversation. I do have a lot of discussion prompts that I will be happy to just start asking folks questions, but I really want this to be a session, a conversation, and we're learning a lot from all these discussion sessions, so thank you. And just Zoom, it is Zoom, we're all familiar with us. We've been through these sessions before. I'm okay as long as you don't have a lot of background noise. If you want to keep yourself off mute, that's fine. Feel free to interject, but whatever you're comfortable with is fine. Feel free to use the chat as well. I will make sure that's on, so I'm keeping an eye on that. And let's start with some introductions. I thought since most of us are familiar with one another, let's instead of tell our newfound story, which I think some of you told, you know, it'll be 3 times tonight in these sessions. If you could say your, just let us know your name and your relationship to NLRA, if you're a trustee or an employee, and something really incredible you've seen in the newfound watershed. And I will start. My name is Rebecca Hansen. I probably should have said that at the beginning. I'm the executive director for NLRA. And last fall, I led a paddling trip up the Cockermouth from our Grey Rocks property, and was talking with one of the paddlers, and she asked, you know, have you guys ever seen any moose around here? I'm like, well, I've never seen one, but you know, my time is limited out in this part of the watershed. And not 5 minutes later, a moose came out of the bushes across the Cockermouth and just right in front of us and then up. And I think someone else was paddling further up and saw him cross again. So that was pretty awesome. So I'll just call each of you by name so we're not sort of awkwardly waiting for folks to start. So Ken, you want to go ahead?
There's Ken.
Nope.
You got to unmute.
Yeah,
There we
right.
go.
I should have said that first.
Oh, yeah. I'm Ken Weidman. I'm a trustee, and just about everything is in the watershed is just wonderful.
Betty, go ahead.
I'm Betty Bolke-O'Gara, and actually what I like about the watershed is the wonderful newsletters that you're still sending, and they're available both on the internet, which I send them to both of my sons all the time because they'd never read something coming in the mail, but I enjoy sitting down with a cup of coffee in the morning and going over the newsletter, and it's very colorful, very informative. And I also think that a lot of the work that you've done, you know, putting seminars together and whatever, are very helpful. And the amazing thing is bears are very, very prominent now. I go for a walk usually about 6:30 in the morning, and twice now on my walk, I've seen bears, and I have a dog too, and I always get concerned. But more importantly, that formerly was just a Memorial Day thing. Every now and again, you'd see a bear striding across the road, but now they're becoming more apparent. So that's amazing to me. But
Thanks,
they
Becky.
like, there's one particular place that they like on the road. I guess they get their breakfast at.
Very cool. Bob, go ahead.
Bob Martens, trustee, Bridgewater. I guess I'm inclined to match your moose story. I mean, they are so special and so awesome. But my wife and I were canoeing along the lakeshore, late season, you know, so we just were hugging the coastline when we were down right by Onaway and looked up and both thought we were looking at a moose statue in the water. We just couldn't imagine why somebody would put a moose statue in the water, but there was this moose just literally, I mean, there you are in a canoe and you're staring at a moose, you know, 20 feet in front of you. And it was just utterly awesome. And it was off season. So this guy, it was, I mean, those that have been up here for a while may remember, but he kind of hung out in Onaway for a while because nobody was there. And I used to walk down and visit him. I used to just think it was so intimate that I could go down and visit my pet moose every day. So it is a moment like that just really stands out. It's probably been, you know, 15 years ago now, but it just was a magical moment that just kind of defines why we love up here. I call it a real cheap thrills capital because every day there's another cheap thrill out there. You know, the sunrises, the sunsets, every day is magical.
Thanks, Bob. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Cathy Redman. I'm a member and I live in Bristol. And I would have to agree with Ken that I think everything around the watershed is just beautiful. But I think most recently, Grey Rocks. Grey Rocks is just an awesome area. And the work that you guys have done there and that you continue to do and to continue to improve it is just wonderful. I love the fact that people can purchase, sponsor benches, can sponsor the boardwalk in honor or memory of people, the plantings, and being able to put kayaks in and out there. It's just a absolutely beautiful, beautiful area.
Great, thank you. Parker.
Hi, Parker Griffin, and this is Camille Barucha, and I'm a trustee. In Hebron, we had one summer's day, I walked out to, I was going to take garbage to the garage, which is just across the way from my front door, and I was kind of distracted, and it was early, and I was stepping off my front porch, and I heard a noise to the left. It was a really huge bear standing in my driveway. And I think I really scared that bear a lot because the bear looked at me and I looked at the bear and the bear stood up and was really a rather large bear. And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to hit pots and pans? Am I supposed to look at the bear? And the bear and I looked at each other for a second or two, and it seemed like a really long time. And, you know, it was pretty obvious. The bear turned around and ran the opposite direction. I turned around and ran into my garage. And that was the end of my story. That kind of stuff happens all the time here. It's great.
Camille.
Well, I want to repeat what Betty said about the newsletter. It's just been fantastic. It's so informative and well laid out. And I think all the extra stuff that you've been doing since you've taken on has just been great. But I also agree about Grey Rocks. I mean, we were here before Grey Rocks got developed, and it's just changed that whole area and the access. And it's amazing how many people use that space in all seasons to walk either down along the trails or launch their canoes and kayaks. And I think it's just a great way to have people have access. And then all the stuff that you're doing to educate down there is great.
Thank you. Martha.
Hey, I'm a trustee from Hebron, and I agree with all your wild animal stories. We've seen bobcat out below our deck, and foxes and bears climbing the apple trees. But I like to also bushwhack around the watershed on all sides during the winter on snowshoes looking for wild animal tracks. And we often don't see them out there because we make way too much noise, even though we're trying to be quiet. But it's almost as exciting to be out in the woods, just in these beautiful little hidden valleys here and there, and come across bobcat tracks or moose tracks or deer beds. And often the animals, there's multiple tracks. The animals are out there all the time. They know where each other go. They sometimes go in each other's tracks. And so it's just a whole different way of looking at the world that I've been enjoying.
That's great. Thanks, Martha. Karen.
Hi, thanks everyone. I'm Karen and I work for the NLRA. There's so many things I love about this area, but definitely the wildlife is really one of my favorites. I've always been just crazy about owls and really thought it was going to be my most favorite animal ever. And then last year I had both an owl, last summer I had an owl and a bobcat live at my yard for the entire summer. Same branch under the same bush, they were sleeping, and I kept hoping nothing would ever happen between the two of them. I didn't really want that much nature happening, but nothing did. But it was absolutely amazing to see, and I saw the owl again twice last week, so I'm hoping he comes back, or she.
Thanks, Karen. Cathy?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Cathy Bird. I'm a trustee. I live in Bridgewater. It's hard to nail down one story. I would say I appreciate the watershed mostly because of the beauty. It tends to provide an extra deep breath for me on those nights sometimes when I come home and I'm tired and just drive by, and it just kind of writes everything and puts it all in perspective for me. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Cathy. All right. Well,
hey, Rebecca, can I interrupt here? Because I got to tell Bob Martens, I'm really disappointed in your moose story. I thought you had one better than that. Wasn't it something about coming home from Florida?
Well, yes, we did have a special treat this year, but that was not on the highlight film, Ken, okay? We did have a close encounter with a moose, and as in I think probably, my wife and I disagree on this, but I think it was the aft end of the moose decimated our windshield. And yeah, we did. We had a close encounter. The moose shattered our windshield. My wife was driving. I might have been nodding off at the time. So I did not see the moose, but we had plenty of remnants on the windshield to indicate that we did have a moose. The car behind us indicates that the moose trundled off into the woods, so he was not any the worse for wear. But once again, it was a very, very exciting event, but one I'm trying to forget, Ken, but thanks for reminding me.
all right. Well, I wanted to just kind of get everyone to tell a quick story about something special that they experienced in the watershed. Just to think about, I think a lot of what, people have a really strong connection to this place. But then there's also people who live within the watershed who don't have a strong sense of place for the lake, the watershed, what happens, the environmental systems that are functioning around us. So I think when we talk about education at NLRA, we're looking at a broad scope. We're looking at people with shorefront residences. We're looking at people with, sweeping watershed views. We're talking about school kids that live in downtown Bristol. We're talking about our private and public schools, Plymouth State University. There's a broad spectrum of folks that we're interacting with when it comes to education, visitors from afar. So I just want to give a quick overview of the stuff we're doing right now, and how we're trying to connect people with Newfound, with our mission to protect and conserve Newfound. Well, my cat is shredding paper at my feet, so sorry if that gets a little loud. So let's see if I can make sure I get everything. Please, those of you who've been around longer than I have, please chime in. The one I always forget to add onto the list, I'll add first, is Ecotours. That's a primary contact for a lot of folks when they learn about how the lake functions, the work NLRA does, and then just get out in the lake. A lot of people don't have access to a boat. The Ecotours will get them out there. We do a lot of programming for all ages. This year, we've really tried to pick up some of our programming for young kids through story time and what we're calling Nature Station, so interactive educational play that we host out of Gray Rocks. We, in the summer in particular, we run a lot of educational lectures, stargazing, things that align with our mission that maybe aren't totally in the pocket of lake and watershed conservation, but are in the zone there. So stargazing, mushroom foraging. We host a paddle that with a naturalist. We do some work with area schools, a little bit with the public schools. I know we've done work with Holderness School in New Hampton and Plymouth State, St. Bonnie. Not a consistent regular event, but we are in touch with schools. And then just coming up, we do an annual State of the Lake where we talk about water quality monitoring and all the other work we're doing in the watershed. This spring we'll do a land conservation education event, so trying to teach people what it means to conserve land and the different reasons why people do conserve their property. Our AmeriCorps members will be leading education events at least twice a month throughout the summer. And then we have more of our nature station, story time, things like that. So that's kind of the quick overview of what we're doing now. Oh, and then we have what we call our passive education. We've heard a few people mention our newsletter. That is a way for us to educate people both on our mission, the work we do, and then other interesting lake facts. Our print newsletter, the Monitor, our email newsletter, our website, and then our social media as well. Really, we're looking to create and foster a sense of stewardship for the lake and watershed among the newfound community. So my first couple discussion prompts are, how are we doing, and who are the people we most need to reach? So those are kind of broad, but please feel free to chime in, take yourself off mute if you have anything to add. I have other questions if this one is not inspiring.
Rebecca, let me just say, I think, because I've been part of the Ecotours for several years now, and it's outrageous how the impact that the Ecotours have. And I've been out there with people that have lived on the lake. I mean, one of the highlight films I have was God love him, we lost him last year, but Dave Carr, 90 years old, grew up in Bristol and just, was a part of every bit of the history of this lake. And he came down for an Ecotour, a year and a half ago. And he got off just in awe of what he had seen that he hadn't seen before. Now, how can a guy that's been here for 90 years not have seen it all? But I think it just shows us the impact and the power of the Ecotours. And I think one thing we can do better as NLRA is try to make sure every time that boat leaves the dock that we're full. And then we have a system of free. I don't, because we don't do it to make money. And it's a real economically feasible for anybody that does want to pay what it is. But I think if we can get kids, we can get anybody that is remotely interested in getting on those Ecotours. I think that's just a great way to reintroducing everyone from kids to 90-year-old Dave Carr-esque type people, to get out on the lake, because it is magical. And every time we go, we see the loons, we see the eagles, and we just experience the lake at its best.
Just out of curiosity of this group, how many have been on an Ecotour? And I will point out my hand is down right now. So not because I'm facilitating, but because I've never been on an Ecotour. So that was due to some complications this summer. So that's great. That's any feedback from those of you who've been on Ecotours? You heard from Bob.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you do Ecotours like with a group of kids from Tapley Thompson or any of the summer camps?
So
as a group?
Yeah, so we were working with the Tapley Thompson or the TTCC, and they're running the last week of their summer program. We were running a camp for them essentially, or with them.
Oh,
where we
okay.
got a bunch of them out. Unfortunately, last year we weren't able to do it because of even because of COVID, but because of the school schedule. And then this year, there's some reason we're going to try and spread it over the entire summer. So we do work with them.
Great.
I think there's definitely opportunity to get more school kids, especially those kids that live, they know Wellington, a lot of the school groups, or a lot of the school kids, but a lot of them just don't have the opportunity to get out on the lake. So I think something that would be great to figure out where in the, elementary school, middle school curriculum does, place-based environmental science fit, and how can we get those kids out there? How can we help through grants or other funding to pay for the cost of the field trip bus, because things like that do become prohibitive for
Right.
budgets. So
I was also thinking of Circle and Mayhew kids who don't, they are at a lake, but they don't know much more other than their activities, and that I thought would be a good, I don't know how that would work with them, but
Well, they might be interested.
they might be interested, yeah.
2 years ago, I think we had some sort of grant, and we got, or the Circle program had a grant. I can't remember who had the funding, but we worked with them to provide some programming, and we've worked with them last summer, but we couldn't do it to have some. So we'll be doing this again with them in the future, but getting them, especially because their camp is up on Speck Pond, so
Right.
getting them out onto the lake. And we do have a great partnership with Mayhew program, but I think our relationship with all the camps, I think there's opportunity there for sure. So,
I was
Martha.
just, it's always been a challenge to communicate and engage the hill people and the forest people who aren't on or near the lake, and lots of them have really never had an opportunity to get out on the lake and understand what watershed they're part of and how watersheds work, that you learn when you're out on those tours. So I'm wondering if there might be, again, grants or scholarships for families in the towns, maybe in partnership with their conservation commissions or something, to invite them out to go tours or something.
Or even something, that it's like every fourth grader gets a family gift certificate, and the library boosts it with some extra information, or how can we partner with schools to have it fit within what they're already learning?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, I think you need to augment your education staff, is what I'm thinking. I mean, I love everybody, okay, but I think that's just on my mind a little bit, that because I think you can have a million good ideas, and I'm saying that it'd be great to execute on all million of them, but
You need people.
you need some people.
Right.
So you have people, but I think you need more people. I'm just saying that.
Well,
Another person. How about that? So,
I tend to agree.
because there are a billion little things like this which could be followed up on, and they'd all be great.
Yeah, I think, and that's part of the strategic planning process, is to help determine what the need is for something like this, because for us to do more programming, really, we need more people to be able to do it. So we can come up with a lot of great ideas, but they're going to stay ideas until we have some awesome people to help us implement them. So, Ken.
We have 3 elementary schools in the system, the Bridgewater Hebron School, the Bristol School, and Danbury. Although Danbury is not part of the watershed, I'm wondering, and kind of segue onto what Parker just said, whether there could be a possibility of setting up a series of discussions or courses, if you will, where we could send someone into the elementary school in our off season, December, January, March, November, when we're not quite so busy, and just run a series of discussions with the second or third graders that are about what we do, about what the lake is all about the watershed, how it works, and maybe run it for a 20-minute session to come in a couple times in each of the schools, and maybe we wouldn't need extra people to do something like that, but do it off-site or, on-site at the school itself rather than bringing them to the lake, and then maybe follow up with having those kids everybody in the 3rd grade or the 2nd grade gets a free ticket or an opportunity to come out in June, if you will, while they're still in school and do an eco tour.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And then you reinstate ice cream on the Ecotours. I never got my ice cream, and I was told I was going to get an ice cream. But whoever was sponsoring ice cream stopped.
It's only for kids.
Oh, I didn't know
If you
that.
haven't looked in the mirror lately, you don't qualify anymore.
Actually, I think Martens ate my ice cream is what I'm thinking.
What happens on the Ecotour stays on the Ecotour. Sorry.
What about Plymouth State University? Are they still a state teachers college? And to actually look at internships, full year internships perhaps, and tie it into some STEM teaching even for middle school and high school kids, that would be great. And you'd get some real good continuity out of that too. I don't know, at the last meeting, one of the fellows that was here was affiliated with Plymouth State, right?
Right.
But are they still a state teachers college, or actually I know they're now a university, but they used to be have a big, strong teaching component. That may be an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because when we think of Plymouth State, we often think about what we can do as far as we've worked a lot with their environmental science and policy students and grad students in their grad program in that same field, biology students. But I think we haven't really thought about how we could work with those that are trained to be educators and how we could have them help us develop stuff as part of a classroom project. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Actually, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy, it was Joe Boyer, right?
Yeah,
so
Joe Boyer on our board. He's the director of research.
That's a conversation with him because that's part of his role.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think.
Yeah. Well, he is our liaison with the university, and we do have an active memorandum of understanding with PSU, and half of our staff have graduated from grad school from there as well. So we do have some sort of loyalty to the program or to the school. So all right, other great ideas. I think I'm happy to just let people to keep coming up with ideas, and I could ask my list of scribbled questions over here. So
I think the the situation that we're in now, with COVID, has meant that we do everything on Zoom. And what's been interesting many of us, I'm sure, is that the range of nonprofits that have been providing educational classes on Zoom, it's just ridiculous. It's great, okay? But, everything from the AMC to the Forest Society to I don't know who is educating us about, COVID and the future and environment and forest and every, 2 or 3 times a week, you can have a session with some educational nonprofit about nature. So I would think that we need to keep that in mind in the future, that we need more resources for education, but also understand that, Zoom has changed people's habits.
Mm-hmm.
And this could be a session tonight on, lake levels, or this could be this is something that we need to think about continuing with the idea of an online Zoomy type of education thingy.
Yeah.
Let me just throw out too. I think in the realm of partnerships, I know that many of the group here have been to the Red Barn series over in Hebron, and there's just tremendous capacity there. And I'll tell you, we're all busy people, and it's so easy on a Tuesday night to forget the Red Barn series. But
Right.
but the Red Barn, you know, there is an event over there every Tuesday night, and Audubon has done a great job of providing wonderful resources. But we do a terrible job. I say we universally, collectively, you know, don't do a good job of getting people there. We typically have 20 to 30 people there, and we should have 40 to 50 people there, because we have the capacity. It doesn't cost a penny more to have twice as many people.
Yeah, that's true.
And we've had terrific presentations. So I think maybe we just need to do a better job of partnering with Audubon, who is one of our natural partners up here. We share an awful lot in common with them, but I think that's an area where we can really expand our education mode.
Great. Martha, I saw your hand up a little while ago.
Yeah, and say one thing that seems to be very effective is to have, like, again, when we can get back together again, or even on Zoom, like in the winter seasons, but our series of workshops, like 3 or 5 or something. And what we used to do was move them around the watershed. We have one in Bridgewater, and then we have another one in Alexandria, and, you know, one in Hebron. So we go out into the field for those various workshops, like for owls or lake levels or land conservation or wildlife. But it seems like people get engaged when there's a few things to sign up for.
Yeah.
I think you've done that in the past couple of years. You've had some series of activities, and I think continuing that kind of thing can be really effective, and moving it around the watershed will bring in different groups.
That's great. I like that idea.
I've been sitting here thinking about what I was talking about earlier, and we talked about getting kids to Ecotours, or maybe get them on site at Grey Rocks. But as soon as you do that, then you're talking about transportation costs, which is automatically is putting up red lights for the school system because they can't afford them. But would it make sense if we could pursue something of going into classrooms to have a video done or down at Grey Rocks, just walking around and displaying all of the plantings, what they mean, the trees that we put in there, the platforms. We've got all of those plaques out there that talk about the various animals that are in the habitat out there, and use that as a guide. That would be, with today's ability to do videos on our own phones, I mean, it'd be pretty easy to do something that we could bring into the classroom, and that might be an idea to expand it and get over the issue of paying for a school bus to bring kids in from the middle school or the elementary school.
Yeah, I can see benefits to making something like that available. I also see the benefit of trying to find some funding to get kids there and on site and interacting with the environment. But something I would really like to get to, which we didn't get to last year, is even post-COVID times, is have some sort of virtual eco-tour. So you maybe get the pieces of the eco-tour in different video clips, so you can experience it. You know, obviously it's not going to be the same as, you know, sticking your face close to the water and getting a Secchi disc reading, or, you know, doing a plankton haul or anything like that. So, but still, it might get people to reconnect if they've been on an eco-tour, or at least get an idea of what they're doing, or so something that we put on our AmeriCorps' long list of ideas and things to do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
The Hebron Bridgewater School has this beautiful greenhouse. And I know one of the teachers, the paraprofessionals in the middle school, does some planting with them. And I think you can tie in the work that they do in that sense with the outdoor planting and the outdoor, besides planting vegetables and whatnot,
Yep.
the trees that you've done at Grey Rocks,
Yep.
which is just a great way to study how you can restore a place that had been basically messed up. And you can just watch those little trees grow into bigger trees. I think they can tie it, because obviously the school curriculum includes some of that.
Yep.
Already.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And thinking about, you know, this is great lessons for kids to bring home too, is the idea of native plantings and why we're interested in making sure there's a whole season full of things that attract pollinators, not just, you know, certain things at one time a year. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there for sure.
Could even include a section on why the beavers like our property so much too, and what they do and how they cut down those saplings and pull them out on the ice and build their lodge. I mean, that's all pretty interesting.
Yep. And then what a philosophical argument or conversation for us to have about what to do as a conservation organization about the beavers who might be blocking our access by boat to Grey Rocks. So
maybe you could even set up like a webcam, and then people could sign on and see what are the beavers doing today, or you know, and then that's another way that the teachers could also access the information from the classroom. They could check in, okay, let's see what, you know, how are the beavers doing today, or you know, is he hanging out? I see with his buddies, you know, all the
Well, Martha, because you keep an eye on Martha keeps an eye on the beaver deceiver down. That would be a good place to have a webcam.
Yep. Yep. Right. And we'll have to put it out there, because that's a very active beaver site, but it's kind of controversial because it's flooding a town road that's not used, but
nobody drives there anyway.
But nobody drives to that road. That's why it's so controversial.
Yeah.
I hear about that beaver dam on my end because of when it blows out, it, you know, turns that end of the lake a not so pleasant color. So,
well, there are several beaver dams along that sub watershed of the Georges Brook.
Yep.
So.
Right.
You do some amazing flood control and you know, actually the more beaver dams you can line up, the more likely you are to get the big flood. But yeah.
Well, although, they rarely fail. Usually they have to get pulled apart or blown up. So it's lots of controversies from many points of view.
No, but we were talking about educating kids and not about the politics. About the beavers.
We're going to teach them about explosives.
The beavers. So I'll remind Suzanne to find the animal cam, because we do have one.
Well, she took a great video when she interrupted that beaver at around 4:30 in the morning, and it really ticked off the beaver that this human being was showing up. He hadn't finished his overnight work. He was ticked off. He started slapping his tail on the water, very pissed off.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, it's fine. Just making sure there aren't any other comments before I go to my list. I mean, it's already 7:45 here, so
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I don't want to let the evening go by without talking about infrastructure needs for education. You know, we talk a lot about the potential for Grey Rocks as possibly hosting an education center, but just curious to hear what folks think about the need to have a space with access to the outdoors, and not that it has to be a place at Grey Rocks, but we just love to hear
a good way to transition.
Or what's missing for infrastructure, and what are our needs for education.
I think that will enhance the education to have a facility that's indoors. You can have displays, you can have space for people you can have an indoor thing depending on the weather. But also at Grey Rocks, then you have some exposure and presence as an organization. For the number of people who go down there, many of them probably don't know anything about NLRA because they drive by and they go, oh, look, we can go in here. But it's a way to be exposed NLRA, but also have a facility that I think about the little tiny Audubon cottage they have in Paradise Point, but it's not so obvious. I mean, people by word of mouth might find out about it, but not so much in any other way. But they have the indoor facility to show kids animals or whatever it is that they show them. I think a space for education makes sense to me. That's all.
Thank you.
Well, they're focused on animals and we're focused on the watershed. So there's
Right.
no,
What I'm just saying is that you can
complementary, it seems like to me.
Yeah, but so that whatever education we're already thinking of doing, having a space makes sense to me. You can have displays about the watershed issues and the conservation issues. So people can learn more I'm a visual learner. So I like to go in and say, okay, well, what are they talking about when they talk about various issues about conservation?
I should say that we have an entire session dedicated to gray rocks next week, but I wanted to just think about it. Oh, not necessarily just gray rocks, but just think about, talking a lot about, getting people more involved in the work that we do and the health of the watershed and what do we need what are we missing here that we don't have, and then thinking about the opportunities that are available at Gray Rocks.
Right.
I didn't mean to totally kill the conversation either. So.
Have an incredible outdoor classroom. So I think I am tending to agree with Parker that you need capacity to offer more programs the watershed has so many facets to it, and the lake along with the Ecotours. So to be able to go around the watershed and utilize some of that outdoor classroom space, I guess is just capacity for inviting families and getting families and kids there, whether we buy a bus or rent a bus or, just rely on family transportation to have programs in different places.
Remind me to tell you sometime about how the small bus we owned at the SLA and how that ended up.
Yeah. Well, also a lot of the kids, so one of the teachers that we know one year had a couple of little kids who'd never gone hiking around the lake.
Mm-hmm.
She took him on a hike, and of course he had parental permission and all of that. But the kid was totally enamored, had never been on a hike, never gone up a hill to see the view of the lake. And it was a big change for him growing to learn that he lived right next to this lake and didn't know anything about all the trails around and how those trails allow people to appreciate the lake and the watershed. There's always logistics with kids. You had to have permissions and insurance and all that kind of stuff. I understand, but it's got to be ways to, at some point, we do that for adults. We've had led hikes for adults, but maybe some of the kids down in Bristol have never gone swimming in the lake.
Yep.
They don't have access to it.
Right. And I think just hiking with kids too, if it's not something that you do on your own, it might not be something you're going to bring your kids on. So providing resources and just how to hike with kids, aside from just bringing plenty of snacks, and there's
right.
Right. So the blueberries are ripe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blueberries. Another thought is just there are some amazing locations around the lake, and I don't know how neighborhoods would like this, but if you just take people up to some of these high perches where you have an expansive view of the lake, and if they don't know what a watershed is, it's a great way to, it's a great aha moment.
Yep.
You say, now I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Pretty much see the whole thing.
everything goes downhill.
Well, if you walk down just the road that Martha and me live on, George Road, the number of streams that go across underneath our road, you take a kid down 2 miles from our house to the end, you see how many streams, all that water goes into the lake. And people don't think about that. I mean, and it's everywhere, not just here, but it's a simple thing.
It's a simple thing to do.
Yeah.
Rebecca, we've talked. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, school systems too are beginning to look at project-based learning, and that could be a real potential for funding for the center, in addition to reaching out to Bridgewater, Bristol, and Danbury. And there is a lot of money coming through right now. It's an opportunity to bring kids into the environment or into a place and do projects. And you know, you all have such good expertise on what types of projects are needed. If that could be really operationalized, that would be a great way to go, and to bring the kids in for some continuity and
Yeah.
you know, so
I like
just a
that
thought.
idea too. I like bringing kids and getting them involved in actual science, so they're not just, you know, doing a lab. They can go out and take a Secchius measurement, and they're contributing to our knowledge base of the lake. And I think that, to me, that seems way more exciting than just doing something in a classroom vacuum. So.
And the other thing is, do you all work with AMC at all? You know, you're talking about hiking and whatever, and you know, orienteering and the things that, you know, AMC does, or not really?
I know we've done some work with them in the past, but we're not regularly partnering with them right now. But there is we do have a good relationship with them. So
yeah.
But another organization to work with that we don't think about very often. So.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, as we were talking about sites, we've talked about our Grey Rock site, but you know, we also have Sugarloaf and Goose Pond up there, and what a great place, what a short hike that would be for kids to be brought up there and just walked around. It's, you know, in a very short period of time, you can walk all the way around Goose Pond, and just as a hike or as a nature outing, or, you know, the habitat that's up there. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a good one to always remember too. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't take any time, and you know, it takes you about 10 minutes to get to Goose Pond, 15 minutes, and it's completely, it's its own little ecosystem.
Yep.
And there are a hell of a lot of beavers there.
Beaver activity.
Yeah, beavers activity.
Those are the not so controversial beavers over on that side, though.
Yeah, those guys.
We don't worry about them.
Yeah.
There's actually a whole series of beaver ponds if you hike below Goose Pond.
Right.
It's amazing. I think there are 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's quite, that whole, I've walked down there. It's amazing.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right.
And one other thing is that, as Martha was talking earlier about her excitement for the afternoon, is go out and see Scan. You know, we get some kids out. We do have our group of trackers, and get them involved with kids as part of an education that we could offer. I mean, that whole thing is pretty exciting. It's more than SCAP too.
Look, poop is always good for school kids. Poop, everybody loves poop.
And that's a great way to teach about water quality too. And you know, as soon as you start talking about poop, you get pretty much everybody's attention, from, you know, kids all the way through adults. So people start to listen to you then. So yeah, it is a good educational tool.
That's right. A webinar on poop.
Yep.
Should I add that into the minutes?
It wouldn't be a regular, yeah, every time I take kids out on the water, it's always part of the conversation. So yes, I think that's great.
Well, part of that, on a serious note, is that the importance of picking up after dogs, because dogs eat not natural food. So what I understand is that their excrement is not good for the environment.
Right.
And people don't all necessarily understand that. And it's because they don't eat natural stuff like most wild animals do. I mean, that's something a lot of people have dogs, and to explain to kids, why do we pick up after a dog? Not just because it's messy, but it's not good for the environment.
Right.
Or for kids.
Yeah.
Or for kids, right?
They've got parasites and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, bacteria, and then the nutrients that come with it that can impact the surface water as well. So yeah, we only have about 6 more minutes, so if
We're
we
ending
really
on
want to
poop.
get into a poop discussion,
We're going to end on poop. Unbelievable. That stays out of the minutes.
Yeah, I swear, all ages. Yeah, anything else to add? I mean, it's 5 of 8 right now. I don't want to cut off the conversation, but I want to make sure we all have a chance to have some evening time as well. Any further comments? Martha?
I sort of just have a question. And many years ago, my mom started the Naturally Newfound Fair. And it was started in the spring, I think Memorial Day weekend, as a plant sale to raise money for the Newfound Lake Region Association early on. And I think my mom fashioned it after a plant sale that used to be sponsored by our Unitarian church, where we were in outside of Boston. And it was very successful. It went along for many years and actually expanded into quite an incredible educational program where fish and game was involved. We had people with raising sheep and spinning wool, and it sort of turned into a combination environmental fair. DES would be there, New Hampshire Lakes Association, Audubon. There were activities for kids and just real education. And then it also spun off and had crafts. And I used to bring over books from a publisher, an environmental publisher I worked with in Vermont for many years. Books on sustainability and organic gardening and alternative energy. And it's a huge effort. I know, Ken, you were on the board when we were doing that. And I think the board decided at one point that it wasn't worth the effort. And it was meant as a friend raiser and a membership raiser, and an environmental fair that was specifically sponsored by the Newfound Lake Region Association. And I wonder if that might be revitalized again, considering the number of other nonprofits there are in the area, looking over, watching over the birds and the environment, and that is just a huge draw for the organization. And if it might be a consideration in the future, in a similar format to the past or a different format from the past, but somehow an event to get people to just engage with all the facets of the NLRA and all the activities that the NLRA does.
That's good to know. I've heard mention of it, but I haven't heard as much description about it as you just gave. So it's good to hear more about what that was about.
Maybe even in conjunction with the conservation commissions around the watershed. Although I know each town has its own, I think most of them have their own home day event as well, which means, going to a lot of their events. But just a thought. It was a pretty neat occasion.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Anything else from folks? This has been a great conversation. Oh, sorry, Parker, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, thanks for hosting this.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
It's I'm not going to share my end of session slide, which I did last night or last week, because everyone has already seen it. But we will be doing this one more time with the topic of Grey Rock's conservation area next week. It looks like it's a bigger group already. I think we've got about 17 people registered, so it probably won't be as intimate of a conversation, and it'll have to probably be a little more structured, but would love to hear your input on that topic. Really appreciate all the feedback and ideas and conversation from everyone. So thank you so much for being here for multiple sessions, all of you. So, and please reach out. I'll follow up with an email in a couple of days, but please reach out if you have any other ideas. So,
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, guys.
This is great, Rebecca.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.